among Black birthing people in the United States.
Black birthing people
and birthing people.
For birthing people.
Black birthing people.
And a Black birthing person.
Stop this. Hi, my name is Sydney. Welcome back to the Death Star. And as per usual, before we do the thing, this video is sponsored by Ground News. Now, we've talked a lot on this channel about the erasure of fathers, of masculinity, of bear-killing, axe-wielding, bearded Viking men. Where are all of you? Not married to me. That's where. Side note, I feel like this is why I'm very into Assassin's Creed Valhalla at the moment, because they made the main character a mega babe. And I'm not mad about it. But what we've never really discussed before is the way that wokeness is attacking women. A concept I'm betting a bunch of people have either never thought about or simply don't agree with. And before you think I'm turning into a feminist lunatic, hear me out. Because I too was full of question marks to begin with. And honestly, finding myself agreeing with certain feminist groups has been a bit of a weird experience. So there's that. But over the last couple years, I've noticed, and I'm sure many of you have too, that there has been an uptick in companies, brands, social media platforms, the media, academia, and even government institutions changing language to accommodate a push for gender neutrality and inclusion of people who identify as women. Not to mention other areas such as sports, law and order, medicine, and so on that have been shifted to accommodate society's new, broader definition of women, sometimes to the detriment of biological women themselves. And that's what I'd like to talk about today, how wokeness has led to and continues to lead to the erasure of women. But before we get on and traverse this path of sads, let's hear from today's sponsor, Ground News. It's a Saturday morning, you open the social media platform of your choice, and then spend the next 30 minutes reading through the headlines of the day. But let me let you in on a little secret. Come close. Closer. Closer. Closer! Whatever you read is wrong. Well, it's not that it's wrong, it's that the media is biased. Journalists like to present their opinions as objective, and nobody can be bothered fact-checking anymore.
Smiling at women is sexist.
Which is why Ground News is so important. It gives you, the reader, the ability to see the political biases of thousands of news outlets from across the political spectrum, and how those news outlets cover the same story. Think of it as like Fox News compared to CNN, but like all the time. Ground News also doesn't use algorithms to deliver you news that it thinks you'll like. Its objective is to give you as many tools as it can to draw your own conclusions about the news around you, giving you a more well-rounded perspective. So if you're like me and you are in fact tired of not knowing what's happening most of the time, then click the link in the description and download the Ground News app for free. Do this and you'll help a baby fairy get its wings. In 2001, a female police officer called Moira Smith was killed in the terror attacks on New York's World Trade Center. She was one of 23 police officers who died while leading people to safety. Glamour magazine named her Woman of the Year after her death and presented the award to her husband. 14 years later, in 2015, Glamour awarded the same title to Caitlyn Jenner, the second transgender woman to be awarded as such after Laverne Cox in 2014. In response to the situation, Moira Smith's husband James returned her award, saying it was insulting to the memory of his wife. In response to Caitlyn Jenner, he asked, "Was there no woman in America or the rest of the world more deserving than this man?" Honestly, I'm kind of surprised that this man was allowed to say any of this at all, and wasn't thrown into the pit of cancelled souls. Not to be confused, of course, with the pit of souls in the movie Hercules, because this is where careers go to die. Now, this sentiment has existed for the better part of 45 years. In 1973, radical feminist Robin Morgan addressed the West Coast Lesbian Conference in LA. She said that she was insulted that a biological man might dress as a woman, be hassled for 5 minutes, and then dare to think he understands the pain of being a woman. No, in our mother's names and in our own, we must not call him sister. Today, this attitude continues to be voiced, and many of the women expressing it are labeled TERFs, or trans-exclusionary radical feminists. Feminists who believe that anyone born a man retains male privilege in society, even if he chooses to live or identify as a woman. The fact that he has a choice means that he can never understand what being a woman is really like. Being that I'm a woman, I feel equipped to tell people what it's like. scalding hot showers, emotional temper tantrums, bleeding from your uterus. Sydney, don't be crass. I wasn't gonna say what you thought I was gonna say. I was gonna say eyes. Ugh, that's even worse. This way of thinking is driven home by infamous comments such as, "The hardest part of being a woman is figuring out what to wear." Words spoken by Caitlyn Jenner to BuzzFeed in 2015. Or in 2016, a British transgender firefighter being nominated for the Fire Service's Woman of the Year and Britain's most influential firewoman. Moves designed to be inclusionary that leave a lot of women feeling marginalized and pushed out of their own spaces. And all the while, on the other side, the transgender lobby and its supporters argue that trans women are no different to biological women and should be treated as such, that their experiences should be reflected and represented and held in the same esteem as their biological counterparts. And more importantly, as Glamour stated in response to Jenner's award, they recognize women with a variety of backgrounds and experiences. But as the saying goes, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and what might have started off as inclusion for many women has resulted in the erasure of what it means and what it is to be a woman. Just the other day, I was perusing Twitter and I came upon this tweet. "Cis womanhood is violence." For those of you who don't understand psycho speak, this means that biological womanhood is violence. And people wonder why I want to fling myself into a volcano. Cis women's attachment to genitalia is violence. Cis heterosexual women's pandering to patriarchy is violence. Cis women's notions of femininity are violent. Womanhood is a construct that is not exclusive to cis women. Again, to translate, this is saying that womanhood is a construct and not specific to biological women. In a lot of ways, this certainly sums up many of the views of our friends over at Woke Island, not to be confused with Feminist Island. They communicate, but they're not the same. And on one hand, there is this prevailing attitude that what makes a woman is not her anatomy, but rather how she feels, acts, and dresses, which might more or less explain Caitlyn Jenner's comments. Or the many disturbing comments I read of transgender women saying they feel most like a woman when they're being sexually objectified. Oh, Dr. Phil! The Women's March, for example, had people asking to remove pussy hats and uterus art because they view it as exclusionary to non-biological women. I mean, why even have a Women's March if gender doesn't exist anyway? In an interview, one of the organizers said that not every woman has a vagina, and not every person who has a vagina is a woman. Not every Coke is a Coke. Some Coke is Pepsi. Friendly reminder, if you wear a pussy hat or center your feminism around genitals, you're being a teensy bit transphobic and alienating, and you might want to reconsider. In this same vein, when this side of the argument does refer to genitalia, sometimes they decide that's all that defines us. Or they go out of their way to deny the existence of intensely, uniquely personal female characteristics and traits. Women have been referred to as vagina owners, people with a cervix, people who menstruate, vulva owners, not to be confused with the car, pregnant and lactating people. These terms have been used by government institutions like the CDC, NIH, and the White House, and actually the UN, but we don't really care about the UN.
And respectful of Black women and birthing people.
The maternal mortality crisis among Black birthing people in the United States.
Black birthing people.
And birthing people.
For birthing people.
Black birthing people.
And our Black birthing persons.
For all birthing persons in Louisiana.
Some of you might even remember recently when the NHS in the UK told midwives to refer to breastfeeding as chest feeding in an effort to be more inclusive. Staff have been instructed that breast milk should be replaced with phrases human milk or chest milk, or milk from the feeding parent. Milk from the feeding parent. I don't know. I don't think it's absurd to say that women and mothers are the ones who get pregnant and carry babies. I'm yet to meet a man who can do this. Can a man get pregnant? No. No, they cannot. Women are sometimes referred to as womixin? Womixin. I don't know. I don't know what this is. This is not English. Anyway, it's a word designed to dually include people who identify as women and non-binary, or in a more radical feminist sense, the X assists in removing the word men from the equation entirely. In mid-2020, J.K. Rowling tweeted about the term people who menstruate, saying, "I'm sure there used to be a word for those people. Someone help me out. Wumbin, Whipund, Woomud? People were quick to accuse her of transphobia, which led to her doubling down, saying that while she supports the plight of transgender individuals, her life has been shaped by her being a female. If sex isn't real, then the lived reality of women globally is erased. The JK in JK Rowling stands for just kidding. For many people, it's hard to disagree. If what makes women unique is in fact not unique, then what precisely links us together? If, as our friend here says, that womanhood is a construct and not specific to biological women, then what characteristics do we even share? Many women, Rowling included, have argued that this kind of language effectively expunges the experiences of women, what makes us women, and completely dehumanizes us. Not to mention denies our unique traits and characteristics. On one hand, our body parts apparently mean absolutely nothing, they do not dictate anything, while on the other hand, they're the only way to which we're referred. When we say that being a woman is more than biology, that it's this immutable thing that we can't quite put our finger on, we're told that it, in fact, can extend to anyone. When we disagree with that, we're called transphobic. When we say that our chromosomes and our anatomy also defines us, we're also called transphobic. When we say that it's both biology and more than biology, a radical leftist head explodes. And then another radical leftist comes along and slurps it up, because they better absorb as many brain cells as they can. What's notable about these language changes is that they don't really seem to apply to men. For example, I don't see anyone out here calling men sperm carriers, or man pickle havers, or XY chromosomes with beard hair. And so by all of this logic, the wokies bring me to an argument I read on a feminist blog. By today's standards and the few things I've mentioned here, it really does feel like being a woman isn't defined by and really doesn't mean anything. If male humans who identify as women are women, then the only common characteristic across the group called women is that they're all human. There is no other characteristic that this group universally shares. However, if you define a woman as an adult human female, then there is a characteristic that everyone in this group shares. They are genetically programmed to produce ova and bear young. Whether they do eventually reproduce and whether their female anatomy works or not isn't the issue. Even non-functioning female anatomy is still female anatomy. What is the common characteristic that is universally true across the group of all human adult females and humans who are living as women that distinguishes this category from other categories? I do not believe that such a characteristic exists. If there is nothing this group has universally in common, then the word woman has no meaning. It could just be replaced by human. The trans community wants us to believe that the common characteristic across the group woman is that these individuals all identify as women. But if they identify as women, that leads us back to the original question. What is this thing woman they identify as? Surely if they identify as a woman, then they can describe what a woman is. If no one can describe what a woman is, then how can anyone know if they are one? The definition, a woman is anyone who identifies as a woman, is a circular definition that leads nowhere. And this lack of definition of what it is to be a woman, what it means to be a woman, what characteristics define us, and so on, is leading to a series of other issues, not only in relation to the erasure of women, but a myriad of other situations as well. Wow, didn't see that one coming. Couldn't have predicted this one. Is it necessary for you to always be this sarcastic? It's the only way I can feel. The inclusion of transgender athletes in women's sports, for example, is a consistent but growing point of contention. Female athletes from all over argue that biological men have an advantage over their female competitors and therefore should not be playing in female leagues. This debate has captured America, in the very least, with an intense push and pull about what's fair and who should be allowed to play in women's leagues, with female athletes consistently arguing that it's taking opportunities away from them. While on the other hand, the transgender lobby argues that transgender women athletes are no different to their biological counterparts and should be allowed to play. People who do not identify as men being allowed in women's bathrooms and change rooms is another area where people take issue. Male rapists can identify as women and be recorded as such in crime statistics in Scotland. Male criminals can identify as women and change to female-only prisons. One writer I read asked, how can crime be recorded in any substantial, accurate, and meaningful way when the perpetrator is allowed to assume a different identity? Why should women assume responsibility for male crimes? What does this imply for the sentencing and punishment phase? The 2016 Dear College letter that changed the Title IX definition of sex here in the United States to include transgender individuals let biological males take educational opportunities, leadership roles, and athletic awards that the law was supposed to secure for women. Female hygiene products, such as Always, removed the female symbol from its packaging as a sign of inclusion. A transgender model in the UK headed a period campaign in 2018 showing that all kinds of people get periods. In 2018, a banking boss who sometimes wears a wig to work was named among the top 100 women in business. After the passage of Bill C-16 in Canada, many have argued that a woman's status is no longer based on her biology or chromosomes. It is based on whether or not she expresses herself as female. The question then becomes, if being a woman can be anything, isn't that also saying it means nothing? In this quest for inclusion and gender neutrality, it's not hard to see and understand that many women are feeling pushed out of their own spaces, and as biological women, they're feeling erased. So I ask the question again, if being a woman is a construct, if it's not specific to biological sex, then what specifically does it mean? What links us together? What is this? In response to this perspective, a prevailing series of arguments on the other side is that we now live in a world where people identify as neither male nor female, or have gone through the gender reassignment process. It doesn't hurt anyone to change terminology to be more sensitive to these groups. And apparently it also doesn't hurt us to expand the definition of women to include more people. I mean, yeah, the fact of the matter is that language changes. It's why no one sounds like this anymore.
What way gar dana in yar dagum feud kuninga thrim.
Actually, you know what? I'd take sounding like that over words like mansplain and manterruption.
What way gar dana in yar dagum feud kuninga.
But much of what we're seeing today, at least from my perspective, feels not only deeply offensive, but also very contrived. When politicians are being suspended on social media platforms because they're saying that men can't get pregnant, it's hard to not view this as a denial of basic human biology, a denial of motherhood and womanhood. And in relation to this particular conversation within this particular topic, when I went to look up how many trans men actually gave birth in the last couple years, I really wasn't surprised at all by the numbers that I found. Full disclosure, I couldn't find any information on how many trans men give birth in the United States because they're still logged as females when they deliver a baby. But I did find some numbers from Australia. According to figures compiled by Medicare in Australia, one of the few national surveys, 75 people who identified as male gave birth naturally or via C-section in 2016, and 40 in 2017. Now there could very well be more, we don't know, but going off the numbers that we do have and knowing that around 300,000 women gave birth in 2017, that's 0.01% of all births coming from trans men. So we are, in essence, changing our comprehension of not only womanhood and motherhood, but also our language to accommodate 0.01% of people. And there's something to be said for how destructive that is. On a personal front, I want to be really clear. I'm not a birthing person. I find it offensive. I didn't ask for this. I didn't want this. It is not representative of me as a woman and what my body can do and the motherhood that I hope to have later down the line when I decide to make pudding people. And understanding how few people we're talking about here to justify these language changes, it's really hard for me to reconcile altering language to detract from one of the coolest things that women can do. Make tiny humans. Of course, with the assistance of XY chromosomes with beard hair. Thank you for your input. As I was writing this video, what occurred to me is that I can express my frustration and sadness at feeling very dehumanized and ostracized as a female. And somehow those feelings are superseded by the wants and needs of the transgender community. And what's funny is that when I express these ideas, I'm called transphobic, which I no doubt will be for making this video in the first place. What's funny about that too is I've repeatedly expressed that I feel a tremendous amount of sympathy for people who do not feel comfortable and happy in their own skin and do in fact want to be the other sex. I've also stated on more than one occasion that I have no desire to be unkind or go out of my way to be disrespectful to these people simply because they're different from me. But accommodating all of this, in my view, should not come at the detriment of women. Gender neutrality and inclusion should not result in women feeling erased. And women, me included, expressing our concern and sadness and frustration again with feeling marginalized should not result in us being pushed further to the edge of the cliff. In the end, wokeness is not on the side of women. It is not helping women. It's denying what makes us special and unique and selling us out for retweets on Twitter. And that is utterly ridiculous. Now, before I open the floor to all of you, this is just a reminder that you can download Ground News for free using the link in the description. Now, I open the floor to all of you. What do you all think? Is motherhood and womanhood actually being erased by your estimation? Do you think that this topic is actually being blown completely out of proportion and none of these things I've mentioned really have any impact? Do you think that we are heading in a very bizarre, weird direction as society when it comes to how we talk about and treat women? And what do you generally make of this issue overall? As always, if you like the video, hit subscribe and the thumbs up button. If you want to leave a comment, feel free to do so. Just be respectful about it. And I will see you guys next time.